Maya Reed always knew her husband, Derrick, had secrets. But she never imagined she'd one day stand over his body, gun in hand, and blood on the floor, knowing exactly what he had done and exactly why she had to pull the trigger. Behind their picture-perfect life lay betrayal, lies, and a chilling disappearance that led Maya to uncover a truth so dark it pushed her beyond the point of no return. What really happened to Elena Voss? And was Maya seeking justice or hiding something far more sinister? This is the story of a wife who caught her husband red-handed and what happened after the gunshot. Maya Reed's life had always followed a predictable rhythm. She woke up at 6, made a cup of chamomile tea, ironed her husband Derrick's shirt, and prepared her lesson plans before heading out to teach 3rd grade at Westridge Elementary. Every evening she returned home to a spotless house, lit a lavender candle, and made dinner, usually grilled chicken or pasta. Waiting for Derrick to return from his long days as a real estate agent. Their marriage, at least from the outside, seemed textbook perfect. 2 high-achieving professionals, no children but plenty of plans. A 2-story home nestled in a quiet neighborhood with trimmed hedges and neighbors who waved but never pried. But something had changed. It was subtle at first. Derrick's smiles seemed more practiced, less warm. He started declining their Friday night movie traditions. Sometimes he came home with the scent of a different cologne on his clothes, not one Maya recognized. He'd brush it off, say he'd been near clients or passed through a fragrance counter. Maya wanted to believe him. She always had. But the mind has a way of poking holes in comfort when the gut says otherwise. On a Wednesday evening, Maya found herself folding Derrick's jacket over a chair when something slipped out of the inside pocket. It was a folded receipt, thick paper, more elegant than the type she usually saw. Her fingers hesitated before unfolding it. The logo read, "The Elkwood Lodge, a cabin-style resort 3 hours north." The date on the receipt was from 2 days prior. Paid in cash. 1 guest, 1 king suite. No work conferences, no client visits. Derrick had told her he was showing homes all week in the city. She stood there for a long time staring at the printed paper, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the television in the background. She could have confronted him right then, could have called him at work, demanded an explanation, screamed into the receiver, but something inside her said no. She tucked the receipt back into the jacket and hung it up like nothing had happened. That night she acted normal. Dinner was baked salmon with lemon slices. Derrick complimented her cooking absent-mindedly, eyes barely lifting from his phone. She noticed he didn't eat much, said he wasn't hungry, claimed he had a headache. Maya smiled, kissed his forehead, and told him to get some rest. Then she sat at the kitchen table long after he had gone to bed, staring at nothing. The next day at school, she couldn't focus. She stared at her students as if they were behind glass. During lunch break, she Googled Elkwood Lodge. The website loaded slowly, but when it did, her breath caught. The pictures showed cozy rooms with stone fireplaces, private balconies facing a wooded lake, and complimentary champagne, a couple's retreat. There was nothing businesslike about it. She started noticing more signs. A second toothbrush in Derrick's travel bag. The way he kept his phone face down every time they were together. A soft hum in his tone when he spoke to someone over the phone late at night. Stepping outside to the porch just slightly too often. But the strangest moment came 2 days later. Maya watched him through the reflection in the bathroom mirror. He was behind her, pretending to fix his tie, but his eyes weren't on himself. They were watching her, studying her, as if he were waiting for something. It chilled her down to her bone. She didn't tell anyone, not even Rita, her best friend since college. Not yet. Instead, she began observing quietly, taking mental notes, timing his calls, checking his car mileage. It wasn't fear that guided her. It was something colder. A quiet detachment had settled over her. The truth wasn't out in the open, not yet. But Maya had started walking a path she couldn't turn back from. Something was unraveling, and deep down she knew the answer would be darker than she dared imagine. It had rained that afternoon, leaving the city under a soft, gray. Maya returned home with her umbrella dripping and her mind heavy. She had not confronted Derrick. Not yet. Instead, her thoughts had turned sharper, her instincts quieter, more calculated. Each detail she noticed was now a puzzle piece sliding into place. Every inconsistency became a breadcrumb, and she followed them with a resolve that surprised even herself. That evening, Derrick's suitcase sat near the bedroom door. He claimed he had a conference out of town, nothing formal, just a networking weekend with potential clients. He packed light. Maya offered to iron his shirts, and he accepted, distracted as he typed rapidly on his phone. She waited until he left to buy snacks from the gas station. He said he wouldn't be long. The moment the front door shut, she moved. The suitcase was unzipped easily, neatly packed. 2 shirts, 1 pair of slacks, toiletries. It looked perfectly normal, but normal didn't feel like truth anymore. Maya pressed gently on the lining of the case. Nothing. She pulled out the shirts and pants, and found a leather toiletry bag tucked at the bottom. Inside, among the expected toothbrush and cologne, was a second phone, black. No case, slightly scratched on the corner. It was powered off. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, and held the phone in her hand like it was a ticking bomb. She hesitated. Would he know she turned it on? Was there a passcode? Her thumb hovered over the power button. She clicked it. The screen lit up with a low buzz. No passcode. Her breath caught. It wasn't the kind of phone someone forgot about. It wasn't old or broken. It was in regular use. A burner, and the contents confirmed it. Dozens of messages, all under one contact. The messages were brief, but intimate. Got the wine, missed you today, that cabin is our escape, I need it again soon. D says he's out of town. You're free tomorrow. Each message struck her like a slap. Time seemed to bend in that moment. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears as she scrolled deeper. Photos appeared, blurry, low-resolution selfies. Derrick's hand on someone's leg, a wine glass beside a fireplace, a woman's foot in a bubble bath, her toenails painted dark red. The intimacy wasn't just emotional, it was physical, raw, ongoing. Maya didn't cry. She didn't scream. Instead, she took a photo of each message, each image, storing them silently in her own phone's gallery. Evidence. Her fingers moved mechanically. She didn't let herself feel yet. She simply acted. The most recent message was just 2 days old. Same place. Saturday. Bring what we talked about. Followed by a location pin. Coordinates, not an address. Maya copied it into her notes. It was remote, outside the city, buried deep in the northern forest. She powered off the phone and placed it exactly where it had been. Shirt folded over it. Bag zipped. Everything just as she found it. Derrick returned 10 minutes later. She was in the kitchen, pouring wine and humming along to the radio. He kissed her cheek too casually. She didn't flinch. That night, she slept with her back to him, eyes wide open in the dark, heart pounding like a metronome. He slept easily, carelessly. The next day, she called in sick. Her voice cracked just enough to sound believable. By 10, she had packed a pair of binoculars, a notepad and a light jacket. She printed a map of the coordinates, marked the trail with red ink. No confrontation, no rash decisions. She was going to find out what her husband was really doing. And this time, she wouldn't be watching from afar with doubts. She would be watching with a plan. The road curved endlessly, weaving through dense forests that grew darker the farther Maya drove. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tighter with each passing mile, the tires crunching over gravel and wet leaves. The GPS flickered in and out, losing signal in the remote backcountry, but she had printed maps and handwritten directions to keep her steady. She was prepared, at least, as much as someone could be when following a trail of betrayal into the wilderness. The last 10 miles were the worst, narrow and rough, barely a road at all. The trees closed in tightly, their branches clawing the sides of her car like they wanted to keep her out or trap her in. When she finally reached the clearing, the cabin came into view like a shadow out of the mist. 2 stories, dark wood, wide windows facing a still lake that reflected the gray sky like a mirror. It was beautiful in a lonely kind of way. She parked half a mile away, down a slope, hiding her car behind a thicket of pine. She brought only her phone, a pair of binoculars, and a lightweight poncho. Every movement was silent, deliberate, the forest muffled sound, the air damp and cold. Maya moved like a ghost, sticking close to the trees as she climbed the hill that gave her the perfect view of the cabin from above. She waited. Hours passed, the sky shifting from cloudy silver to pale blue, then to the first hints of orange. Around 4:23 p.m., a dark SUV approached the cabin. Her breath hitched. Derrick stepped out, wearing his navy jacket and that same easy swagger he used when showing house. He looked relaxed, confident, like a man arriving somewhere safe. She zoomed in. He carried a bag, slung over his shoulder casually. Then a second figure emerged from the passenger seat, a woman, tall, slender and graceful in movement. She had long chestnut hair and wore a cream sweater. Maya didn't recognize her, but she knew exactly who she was. Elena. She watched them laugh. She watched Derrick wrap his arm around her waist. They walked into the cabin together, moving in perfect rhythm, as though this wasn't a secret or a stolen moment, but a ritual. Familiar. Frequent. The lights in the cabin turned on one by one. Maya observed everything, the layout of the windows, the pace of their movement inside. She saw them pass by a window with glasses in hand, heard the faint echo of music, soft jazz played low. At one point, Elena appeared on the balcony, talking on her phone. Her voice didn't reach the trees, but her expression did. It was happy, carefree. Maya felt something inside her go quiet. This wasn't just an affair, this was something else, something deeper, a parallel life, a second version of Derrick that she had never known existed. She stayed until darkness wrapped around the forest like a cloak. Her limbs were stiff from crouching, her eyes raw from staring. Still she did not move. Not until the lights in the cabin dimmed and Derrick reappeared outside, walking toward the SUV. He opened the trunk and pulled out a small square box. Maya tried to zoom in, but the shadows had grown thick. Whatever it was, he carried it carefully, like it mattered. He took it inside. The door closed behind him. That was when she left. She didn't cry on the walk back to her car. She didn't shake or tremble. Her face was blank, like fresh paper, but something had shifted deep inside her, something irreversible. She didn't confront Derrick when he returned the next evening. She served dinner. She asked about his trip. He told her it was productive. She smiled, nodded, kissed his cheek. She didn't say a word about the cabin. She was saving that moment for later. The news came quietly, like a ripple on still water. It didn't make the headline. There were no flashing sirens or emergency bulletins, just a simple missing persons report filed by a property manager near a town 2 hours north of the city. Elena Voss, age 34, last seen checking into a rental cabin near Lake Braeburn. She had reserved it for the weekend and never checked out. Her car was found days later, abandoned in a grocery store parking lot, 20 miles away with the keys still in the ignition. Maya learned of it not from the news but from a strange message in the school staff email chain. A local officer had reached out to several community groups, hoping to find anyone who might have known Elena. Maya stared at the name on her screen for several long minutes. Voss. It struck like thunder behind her ribs. She hadn't known the woman's name until now, but it fit. Elena had looked like an Elena. The pieces were locking into place. That same night she sat at her desk and opened every browser she could. Searches for Elena Voss Lake Braeburn disappearance led to sparse results. A single article, a blurry photo. She studied the woman's face, the long hair, the dark red lipstick, the small beauty mark beneath one eye. It was her, the woman at the cabin, the one Derrick had held, kissed, laughed with. Gone. Derrick hadn't mentioned a thing, not a word. He carried on as if the world remained unchanged, as if nothing had unraveled in that quiet clearing in the woods. He still left in the mornings with his coffee, still came home late with tired eyes and half-hearted stories about tough clients. Maya listened to every word, studied every expression. His calm was too perfect, too practiced. But she wasn't the only one who noticed something strange. Officer Lennox Hayes had been with the department for over a decade, known for solving cases that others let go cold. He picked up the Voss file out of curiosity at first. A grown woman goes missing in a quiet lake town, probably an accident, a solo traveler, maybe even a runaway. But then there was the car, cleaned, wiped down like someone didn't want it traced. No prints, no personal items left behind, not a wallet, not a phone, not a single fingerprint except her own. Something about that didn't feel like an accident. Hayes reviewed the lodge's reservation history. Elena had stayed there several times in the past few months, always for weekends, always under her own name. But her last stay showed an additional guest name scribbled on a note left by the lodge staff. D. Reed, arrived Friday night, left Sunday early. No official registration, just an observation from a curious front desk clerk. That's when Derrick's name first entered the file. Hayes began looking. He checked real estate licenses, background records. Derrick Reed, married, no criminal record, successful agent, nothing outwardly suspicious. But the lodge had cameras, and though most of them had blurry feeds, one angle caught a shadowed profile matching Derrick's description, walking alongside a woman. The timestamp matched the night Elena had vanished. Still, there was no body, no signs of violence, no clear motive. Hayes had learned to keep digging when a case didn't scream for attention. It was the quiet ones that held the darkest truths. Meanwhile, Maya had started keeping her own files. A locked drawer in her closet held printouts, timelines, maps and copies of the messages from Derrick's burner phone. She wasn't ready to bring it to anyone, not yet. She needed more, proof that couldn't be questioned. A mistake made in panic, a crack in his story. Elena's disappearance wasn't just a coincidence. Maya knew that now, and if Derrick was lying, he wasn't just hiding an affair anymore. He was hiding something far worse. The morning air felt colder than usual, as if the world had begun to sense the quiet storm brewing beneath the surface. Rita Caldwell hadn't seen Maya in nearly 2 weeks. They had been inseparable once, college roommates turned lifelong friends. Every Saturday, they met at a cozy little cafe near the library, ordered the same breakfast, and talked about everything from work stress to weekend plans. But lately, Maya had become distant, unreachable. Her messages were short, her tone unreadable. The change was subtle at first, then undeniable. Rita's instincts were sharp. She worked in marketing, trained to notice shifts in behavior, patterns and tone. Something about Maya had shifted. No, cracked. The silence wasn't casual anymore, it was deliberate. And Rita knew from experience that silence, when wrapped around someone who used to be so open, meant something was being buried. On a cloudy Saturday morning, Rita drove to Maya's house unannounced. The driveway was empty, though Maya's car was usually parked on the left side, just under the big oak tree. Rita knocked. No answer. Waited. Knocked again. Still nothing. After a few minutes, she reached beneath the front mat and pulled out the spare key she knew Maya still kept there just in case. Inside, the house felt abandoned, not in the way a vacant home feels, but in the way a place still lived in can start to feel haunted. The curtains were drawn, the hallway lights were off, the living room had a half-finished cup of tea on the table, and a thin layer of dust forming on the piano keys. Rita called out softly, unsure if she wanted an answer. She moved down the hallway, quietly, her steps barely audible against the hardwood floor. The laundry room door was ajar, and something inside caught her eye. A towel damp, crumpled, and streaked with a dark rusty stain. Her heart stuttered. She reached down, touched the fabric. It was blood, old enough to be drying, but unmistakably blood. The air shifted. Her breath came quicker. She should have left, should have called Maya first, or maybe even the police. But curiosity, mingled with fear, rooted her to the spot. She backed away from the laundry room and climbed the stairs slowly, each creak of the floorboards sounding louder than the last. Maya's office door was closed. Rita opened it carefully. Inside, the desk was covered with papers, maps, printed emails, photographs. Some showed a woman she didn't recognize, others were surveillance-style shots, grainy and taken from a distance. A cabin in the woods, a car, a man and a woman walking side by side. And then she saw the flash drive. It was plugged into Maya's laptop, which was still open, a blinking cursor frozen on an encrypted file labeled, Witness 3. Rita clicked nothing. She didn't need to. The pieces were falling into place fast enough. She pulled the drive free, pocketed it, and left the room without touching anything else. She didn't tell Maya she had been there. Later that night she sat in her apartment, heart racing, staring at the flash drive in her palm. She plugged it into her own computer, fully aware of the risk. It didn't open easily, layers of password prompts and warnings, but one folder was accessible. Inside, several video files. She clicked one. The footage was grainy, but what it showed stopped her breath. Derrick, standing inside a cabin, arguing with a woman, the same woman from the photograph, the woman who had gone missing, Elena. The video ended with the woman collapsing to the floor. No scream, no gunshot, just silence. Rita's hands shook as she closed the file. She knew what she had to do. The next morning, a tip came into the local police department.
Anonymous. Just 2 words. Check the Reed house.
Officer Lennox Hayes arrived at the Reed residence under a veil of calm professionalism. He wasn't in uniform. Plain clothes made people less defensive. And he wasn't ready to spook anyone, not yet. He had reviewed the anonymous tip repeatedly before deciding to visit. It had been vague, but specific enough to draw attention. Check the Reed house. No explanation. No details. Just a warning. Hayes knew from experience that when a name came out of nowhere like that, it meant one of 2 things. Someone was lying, or someone was hiding something dangerous. The house was quiet when he arrived. It was early evening, and the sky was tinged with the kind of gold that made everything look deceptively peaceful. Derrick Reed answered the door with a smile, polite but guarded. Maya stood behind him, her expression unreadable, eyes slightly too still. Hayes introduced himself casually, saying he was following up on an unrelated case nearby and just had a few general questions about the neighborhood. Nothing alarming. They invited him in. The interior of the home was clean, too clean, every cushion in place, every surface wiped down. Maya offered tea, which Hayes declined. He glanced around subtly, taking mental snapshots of the environment. Family photos lined the mantel. Maya and Derrick on a cruise at a wedding, smiling in front of their home. All curated. All flawless. But it was the backyard that caught his attention. From the window he noticed the flower bed along the fence line. The soil looked recently disturbed. Not just once, several times, in multiple spots. Freshly turned earth in the middle of summer wasn't suspicious on its own. But combined with the tip and the disappearance of Elena Voss, it was enough to raise his suspicion. Hayes requested permission to walk around the property. Derrick hesitated, then nodded. Of course, he said, voice level. But Maya didn't speak. She stood in the kitchen, watching them through the glass, hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. Outside, Hayes knelt by the flower bed. The soil was damp in patches even though it hadn't rained in over a week. He didn't dig, he didn't need to. A glint of brass caught his eye just beneath the petals of a hydrangea bush, half buried in the dirt. A bullet casing. He carefully slid on gloves and lifted it from the ground. It was old, weathered slightly by time and soil but unmistakable. 9mm, fired. Now the visit was no longer casual. Hayes left shortly after, citing another appointment. He was polite, grateful, smiling, but the moment he got back to his vehicle, he filed for a search warrant. With the tip, the bullet casing, and the open investigation into Elena Voss's disappearance, it was enough. The warrant was granted the next morning. When the search team arrived, Maya didn't look surprised. Derrick protested, confused, angry, asking for lawyers, but Maya stood motionless at the doorway watching as officers combed through the home. In the garage, dried droplets of blood were discovered near the rear bumper of Derrick's car. In the laundry room, luminol revealed splatters that had been scrubbed down, but not well enough. The basement revealed something stranger, a metal lockbox hidden behind insulation in the wall. Inside were receipts, cash and 2 phones. One was the burner Maya had already found. The other was newer and encrypted. But the most disturbing discovery came from beneath the porch. Buried under layers of dirt and stone were scraps of fabric, small bones, animal most likely, and a rusted shovel. On the shovel, a single strand of long chestnut-colored hair. DNA analysis would later confirm it belonged to Elena Voss. Maya said nothing throughout the entire search. Not a word, she simply watched. The encrypted flash drive Rita had given police earlier that week was finally cracked that same day. On it one final video. Derrick, digging in the woods, alone, frantic, covered in sweat. He wasn't just a man hiding an affair. He was a man burying a secret. Derrick Reed didn't run when the pressure closed in around him. He didn't flee or deny or shout. He simply adjusted. It was as if he had expected something like this all along, like every move he made had been rehearsed, planned for an eventual reckoning, but there were cracks forming in his composure, subtle but growing. Officer Lennox Hayes saw them clearly now, in the way Derrick's eyes darted to Maya during questioning, searching her face as though hoping she'd speak for him. She never did. The evidence was stacking faster than anyone could have anticipated. The shovel, the hair, the encrypted phone, the receipts, the flash drive, everything pointed to Derrick, yet none of it was quite enough. There was still no body, no confirmed murder. Elena Voss remained officially missing, her fate suspended in a legal gray area. But Hayes knew the pieces were aligning for something bigger, something final. Maya knew it too. She had seen the fear creeping into Derrick's confidence. It came in flashes, the way his hands shook slightly when locking the front door, the way he stared at his reflection in the hallway mirror a little too long, like he didn't recognize the man staring back. At night, he slept less. His dreams woke him in gasps, sometimes whispering Elena's name under his breath. But Maya was wide awake. She had known, long before the police came, that her marriage was not built on love or trust, it was built on silence, on performance. Now the silence had rotted into something lethal, and she had decided she would not be a bystander to his unraveling. She would end it, not in revenge, not in rage, but with the precision of someone who had finally seen the whole picture. The garage was where it happened. Derrick had just returned from a meeting with his lawyer, an expensive man with expensive words that promised delay but not escape. Maya greeted him as usual, polite, careful. She told him there was something in the garage she needed his help with. A leak in the corner, something strange. He followed her, distracted and tired, rubbing his temples as he walked. Inside, the garage light flickered as she pulled the cord. The air was cold, the cement floor colder. Maya had placed the gun in the glove compartment weeks ago. She had practiced opening it in one motion. No hesitation. Derrick stood near the back wall, facing away. He was speaking, something about hiring a cleaner, someone who could deal with things. His voice was calm, as if murder was now just another task to manage. When she opened the glove box and pulled out the weapon, she didn't shout, she didn't explain, she didn't cry. The gunshot echoed once, sharp and final. Derrick staggered, turned halfway, eyes wide with betrayal or surprise. It was hard to tell. He collapsed near the tool bench, gasping. Blood spread across his shirt in a slow, blooming pattern. He tried to speak. Maya knelt beside him, not in mercy but in confirmation. She needed to hear it. She whispered one question, "Where is she?" His lips moved. A single word, "Gone," and then silent. When the officers arrived minutes later, after Maya called 911, voice shaking but steady, Derrick was barely breathing. He was taken to the hospital, unconscious. Later, doctors would say he'd died on the table, but not before whispering something to the paramedic during the ride. A confession. Elena, the cabin, the fight, the burial. It had all come out in the end. Maya was arrested at the scene but never resisted. Her fingerprints were on the weapon. She admitted to firing it. She showed them the messages, the footage, the map, and still they asked, "Why now?" She answered only once, before her lawyer stepped in, because he wasn't going to stop. The headlines came late, not in the chaotic, frenzied way major scandals usually explode into public view, but with the slow, deliberate crawl of something unsettling that refuses to stay buried. Suburban wife shoots husband after uncovering secret double life. The media circled in quietly, feeding off the grim details as they trickled through court records and police reports. Whispers turned to speculation, facts turned to folklore. In the end, the charges against Maya Reed were dropped. Self-defense, backed by evidence, video proof of Derrick's abuse and manipulation, clear intent to conceal a crime. The emotional toll, the psychological damage, the court called it justified. The public called it haunting. Everyone had a theory. Some saw Maya as a quiet hero, a woman who took justice into her own hands. Others weren't so sure. Officer Lennox Hayes never commented publicly, but in private, he kept a file labeled Reed Voss on his desk longer than necessary. There was something unfinished about the case, something that never quite settled. Elena's body was never recovered, despite extensive searches of the cabin grounds and nearby woods. K-9 units, drones, excavation, nothing. No remains, no grave, just disturbed soil and one last blurry video of Derrick, digging in panic. Hayes reviewed that footage over and over. Each time he paused it on Derrick's face. Desperation, guilt, but something else too, uncertainty. like he himself wasn't sure if what he had done was permanent. Rita Caldwell disappeared from public view altogether. After providing the flash drive and giving one closed-door statement, she vanished from social media, took an extended leave from work, and never responded to reporters. Rumors said she moved to a coastal town, others claimed she checked into a psychiatric facility. Only Maya knew the truth, and she never said a word. Maya, for her part, never returned to teaching. The school offered her a position once the case was closed, but she declined. The house she had once shared with Derrick was sold within weeks of the verdict. She packed lightly, no furniture, no keepsakes, just the notebooks, the evidence files, and a small wooden box she kept locked at all times. She moved north, farther than anyone expected. A quiet cabin on a lake, not the lake, but one eerily similar. Locals said she kept to herself, walked early in the morning, spent long hours watching the water. One neighbor mentioned seeing her digging once, planting something in the back. When asked what it was, Maya simply smiled. People said she was trying to build a new life. Others thought she was still hiding something. In time, the story faded from the news cycle. The footage lost its shock. The reporters moved on to newer tragedies, but whispers clung to the case like fog. At the core of it was a woman who had uncovered a horrifying truth, and then decided how it would end. Yet questions remain. If Derrick had truly buried Elena, where was her body? Why had Maya waited so long to act? And perhaps most unsettling, why had she recorded the footage of the cabin in the first place? The videos were too clear, too purposeful, as if she hadn't just stumbled upon the affair, but had planned for the moment she might need proof, a backup plan, a future defense. Officer Hayes once considered that possibility, that maybe Maya hadn't lost control, maybe she had taken it. And if that was true, then the final question was the one that haunted him the most. Was Maya Reed ever the victim at all, or had she been the hunter all along?